Picture the atom. Go on, you already know how. There's a little ball sitting in the middle, like a tiny sun. And around it, sweeping in neat circles, go the electrons, little planets riding little tracks, whirling around the center. You drew it in school. You've seen it stamped on the cover of a science book, spinning away like a toy solar system, the very badge of the modern age. It's clean. It's pretty. A child can draw the whole thing in 5 seconds. And it is a lie. Not a rounding error. Not some little simplification we'll tidy up later. A flat, whole lie about what an atom is and what it does. The atom has been telling you that story your entire life. And today, step by step, I'm going to prove to you that almost nothing in that little picture is true. Not the orbits, not the planets, not even the part where the thing is solid, not even the part where it's a thing at all. Let me be fair to the lie first, though, because it is a clever one, and the people who first drew it were not fools. They were some of the sharpest minds who ever lived, and they had honest reasons. The reason starts with a man named Rutherford. He fired tiny, fast bullets at a thin sheet of gold, and from the way they bounced, he worked out something astonishing. Nearly all the weight of an atom, and every bit of its positive charge, is crammed into a fantastically small lump dead in the center. A nucleus. That part is real. There truly is a little dense sun at the heart of every atom. And we know electrons are real as well. Little specks carrying negative charge. Opposite charges pull on each other, the way the north end of one magnet grabs the south end of another. So the negative electrons get pulled in toward the positive center. What stops them from simply falling in? Well, planets don't fall into the sun. They swing around it, fast enough that their rush to fly off balances the pull dragging them in. Whirl a stone on a string over your head and you feel the same bargain. The string pulls inward, the stone wants to sail away, and the two settle into a circle. So picture the electron doing that very dance, flung around the nucleus with the electric pull standing in for the string. It fits. It's gorgeous. It even got a handful of numbers right. No wonder we fell in love with it. So there we are, with our cozy little solar system, and everybody's content. But take the picture seriously, push on it, and it cracks. It cracks badly. There is a rule about electricity, as solid as anything in all of physics. Shake a charge, and it throws off light. Wiggle an electron back and forth, and it sprays out waves. This is not some exotic laboratory trick. It is exactly how every radio transmitter that ever stood on a hill does its job. You take electrons, you drive them up and down a metal rod, and they fling invisible waves out across the whole city. Wiggle a charge, get radiation. Every time, without fail. And this is where the whole thing breaks. An electron going around in a circle is being yanked sideways every single instant. Its direction is changing constantly, and changing direction is a kind of acceleration, a kind of shaking. So our circling electron, by the very same iron rule that runs your radio, must be pouring out light, not now and then, constantly. And light carries energy away with it. An electron bleeding energy cannot hold its orbit. It spirals inward, faster and faster, like water curling down a drain. How fast does it fall? Work the numbers, and the answer is a horror. The electron would spiral into the nucleus in something like 10 trillionths of a second. Not a year. Not a heartbeat. A flash so quick you have no everyday word for it. The atom would blaze up once and die. Let that sink all the way in. If the little solar system were the truth, then every atom in the universe would collapse the instant it was born. The chair you are sitting in would flare into light and vanish. The floor under your feet, gone. The air in front of your face, gone. Your own hand, gone, in less time than it takes a spark to jump. There would be no chairs, no floors, no air, no hands, no you. The entire solid world would have winked out in one burst of radiation before the first second of time was over. And yet, here you are, in one piece, following along. not a puff of light. So one of two things must be true. Either the most basic, most thoroughly tested laws of electricity are flat wrong, which they are not, or the atom is simply not a little solar system. There is no third door to slip through. The picture has to go. So out it goes. There are no orbits inside the atom. There are no little planets on little tracks. The electron does not travel a circle or an ellipse or any path whatsoever around the nucleus. Throw the racetrack on the fire. The most familiar image in all of science, the one printed on the textbook cover, describes nothing that exists anywhere. When physicists first understood this, believe me, it was not a happy afternoon. Because if the electron is not going around, then what on earth is it doing in there? You have taken away its orbit. You owe something to put in its place. And the something turns out to be so strange that we are still to this day arguing about what it means. And let me be plain about how big a deal this little crack really was. This was no footnote. The failure of the cozy picture, this business of the electron that ought to radiate itself away and tumble in, is the exact crack that the whole of modern physics came pouring through. The people staring at this problem were not patching a small leak in an old boat. They were watching the floor give way under everything they thought they knew about matter. And what they built to replace that floor changed every idea we have about what is real and what is allowed. Before we build the true picture, walk back to Rutherford's gold for a moment, because it has a second shock hiding inside it. Remember, he fired little bullets straight at the foil. If atoms were solid balls packed shoulder to shoulder, those bullets should have smacked into something, bounced, or stopped dead. Instead, almost every single bullet sailed clean through the gold, as though the gold simply were not there. To them, the foil was no more of a wall than open air. But once in a great while, maybe one bullet in many thousands, one would come tearing straight back, as if it had struck solid stone. Rutherford said it was the most incredible event of his whole life. It was, he said, as if you fired a great battleship shell at a sheet of tissue paper and it came back and hit you. There is only one way that can happen. The atom must be almost entirely empty. All of its substance, all of its mass, sits squeezed into that pinpoint nucleus, and everything around it is open space the bullets fly right through. The rare bullet that comes screaming back is the unlucky one that scored a direct hit on the tiny center. How empty are we talking? Blow up a single atom in your mind until it is as big as a great stone cathedral, the ceiling lost in shadow far overhead. Somewhere in the middle of all that air floats the nucleus, and it is the size of a single grain of salt. One grain of salt in an entire cathedral. Everything else, the whole vast echoing space, is the thin haze where the electrons live. That is an atom. That is what you are built out of. More than 99.9% of you is empty space with a few grains of salt rattling around inside it. And it gets more absurd than that. The gold in Rutherford's foil is one of the heaviest, densest, most solid-feeling substances we have, and even it is almost all void. The same goes for an anvil, a slab of granite, a bar of lead. Now try this one on for size. Squeeze the empty space out of every atom in every human being alive on this planet, pack all those tiny nuclei together until they sit touching, and the entire human race, every last one of us, would fit inside a single lump no bigger than a sugar cube. And that little cube would weigh as much as all of humanity put together, because that is exactly where all the weight was hiding the whole time. Everything else, all the rest of what you are, is the spacious, humming nothing where the waves live. Now sit with that, and then reach out and knock on the nearest table. It is hard. It stops your knuckles cold. Lean on it and it holds your whole weight without giving a hair. Solid, certain, real. And yet I have just told you that this table is almost entirely nothing, and your hand is almost entirely nothing. Two clouds of mostly empty space drifting toward each other. So why don't they pass straight through? Two clouds in the sky float together, mingle, and nothing stops them. A ghost in the old stories strolls right through a stone wall. If your hand is mostly void, and the table is mostly void, why doesn't your hand sink into the wood like fog sinking into fog and let you drop straight to the floor? There is nothing there to catch you. Almost all of it is empty. The bullets flew clean through the gold, so your hand should drift clean through the table. But it does not. Something, somewhere in all that emptiness, is saying no, and saying it hard. What is it? Hold the question in your hand. Knock once more. Something is shoving back at you, and it is not at all what you think it is. Here is the truth that takes the place of the orbit, and you will have to loosen your grip on the word thing to let it in. The electron behaves like a wave. Not a little ball after all, but a wave. A wave of what, exactly? This is the part that bends your mind. A wave of where it might be found. A spread out smear of possibility, piled up thick in some places, thinned out to almost nothing in others. A moving electron has a wavelength, a ripple size, and the faster it travels, the tighter those ripples crowd together. Wrapped around the nucleus, the electron's wave runs all the way around and bumps into itself. And the moment a wave has to close a loop and meet its own tail, something wonderful happens. It is no longer free to be any size it likes. You already understand this, even if you have never once said it out loud. Think about a guitar string. Pluck a string stretched tight between two fixed ends, and it does not howl out a smear of every pitch at once. It picks out particular notes. One clear low tone, and stacked above it a ladder of higher tones, the harmonics. Why those notes and not the ones in between? Because the ends of the string are pinned down and cannot move, and only certain waves fit neatly between them, waves that just happen to fall to nothing exactly at each pinned end. Half a ripple fits. A whole ripple fits. 1.5 ripples fit. But the in-between sizes do not, so they fight themselves and die away. The string is choosy. It allows a tidy set of patterns and forbids all the rest. That choosiness is the music. The electron's wave around the atom is choosy in precisely the same way. Only certain wave patterns fit around the nucleus without canceling themselves out. Each pattern that fits is an allowed state, and each one carries its own definite amount of energy. The patterns that do not fit are simply not permitted, full stop. And there it sits, the thing that always seems so bizarre about atoms, that their energies come in steps instead of a smooth ramp. We never had to invent those steps. Nobody bolted them on by hand. They drop straight out of one humble rule. The wave has to fit. The atom is a musical instrument, and its notes are its energy levels. And think about what that really demands of the electron. To settle into one of these patterns, the wave has to be everywhere around the nucleus at once, all the way around, humming as one single whole. A planet sits at one spot at one time. This does not. The electron in its pattern is not a tiny dot that just happens to be moving too fast for you to follow. It is genuinely smeared all the way around. The way a struck bell is not vibrating in one little place, but ringing as one entire shape at once. That is why you cannot even ask which way it is going around. It is not going around. It is simply ringing. There is a quiet gift buried in this fitting business too. Because only certain patterns are allowed, every hydrogen atom in the whole universe is forced to wear the very same set of patterns as every other hydrogen atom. None of them can drift a little flat or a little sharp. That is why one atom of a given kind comes out exactly like another, why matter is dependable, why chemistry works at all. The choosiness of the wave is the reason the world is built out of a small, tidy set of reliable parts, instead of an endless smear of slightly different ones that could never fit together the same way twice. A plucked string hands you a line of notes, but strike a drumhead, a flat skin pulled tight over a hoop, and now the wave can ripple in two directions at once. You get patterns, rings, crosses, spots where the skin barely shivers, and spots where it heaves up and down. Carry that idea into 3 dimensions all the way around the nucleus, and the electrons' allowed patterns turn into shapes. Some are simple round clouds, like a fuzzy ball centered on the nucleus. Some have 2 fat lobes, like a dumbbell. Some fan out into petals, like a flower sketched in mist. These shapes have a name. We call them orbitals, and you must not let the old word orbit sneak back in when you hear it, because there is no orbit. The shape is not a path the electron races along. The shape is the cloud itself. It is a map of where the electron is likely to turn up if you go hunting for it. Bright and dense where it is likely. Faint and thin where it is not. Nothing at all where the wave falls to zero. And what do you actually get when you finally go looking? Square the height of that wave at any spot, and that number is the chance of finding the electron right there. Where the wave stands tall, the electron shows up over and over. Where the wave is flat nothing, the electron is never once seen. Between one look and the next, it does not sit at any single point. It is spread across the whole cloud, as pure maybe. What that truly means, whether the electron really is nowhere in particular until you catch it in the act, is something physicists honestly still argue about. Anyone who tells you they completely understand that part is pulling your leg, and I include myself. This choosiness, these allowed patterns with forbidden gaps between them, is something you have watched with your own two eyes every single night, without ever knowing what you were looking at. Give an atom a jolt of energy, heat it in a flame or run electricity through it, and you can kick its electron up from a low pattern to a higher one. But the electron will not loiter up there. It drops back down to a pattern it prefers, and when it falls from a higher step to a lower one, it has to throw away the energy it loses on the way down. It flings that energy out as a single flash of light. Here is the lovely part. The exact size of the gap between those two steps decides the exact color of that flash. A particular jump makes a particular color, always the very same one. Now every kind of atom, hydrogen, sodium, neon, has its own private ladder of steps, spaced out in its own way. So each element flings out its own private set of colors, a fingerprint written in light that no other element shares. This is not some faint effect you need a darkened laboratory to chase down. Look at a glowing red sign in a shop window after dark. That red is neon atoms, dropping down their ladder, flinging out the one red that neon flings. The warm orange of a street lamp is sodium doing the very same trick. The colors of the whole lit-up world at night are atoms tumbling down their steps and singing out their own notes in light. The rainbow buried inside every element is nothing more than the music of its standing waves, made visible to you. And now, at last, we can close the wound we tore open at the very beginning. Why doesn't the wave just crowd inward and pile up at the nucleus, where the pull is strongest? Why doesn't the whole thing collapse after all? Because of a rule buried deep in the bones of nature. You cannot squeeze an electron into a tiny space and also have it hold still. The tighter you pen it in, the more wildly it has to thrash about. This is not because our instruments are clumsy and keep bumping it. It is woven straight into the wave itself. Try to crush the electron's cloud down onto the sharp point of the nucleus, and its trapped, pent-up motion rears up and fights you. Harder and harder the more you squeeze, like a stiff spring you are trying to mash flat with your bare hands. So the atom strikes a bargain. The electric pull keeps tugging the cloud inward. The pent-up motion keeps shoving it back out. The two meet at a truce, a certain size where neither side can win. And the size of that truce is the size of the atom. That is why atoms are as big as they are and not one bit smaller. The electron is not held off the nucleus by whipping past it like some clever little planet. It is held off because you cannot fold a wave down to a point without it shoving straight back at you. Which finally lets me answer the question you have been holding this whole time. Why doesn't your hand fall through the table? Two rules working side by side. The first one you can almost feel already. The outside of every atom is electron cloud. An electron cloud is negative charge. Bring your hand down toward the table, and you are bringing negative toward negative, and like charges shove each other away. It is the same stubborn push you feel trying to force the wrong ends of two magnets together, that invisible cushion that fights back harder the closer you press. As your hand nears the wood, the clouds dig in and push back. But there is a second rule, and it is stranger and it is stronger. Electrons flatly refuse to share. Nature simply forbids two electrons from settling into the very same state in the very same place. So when you try to mash two atoms together, their clouds cannot just blur into one thicker cloud. To pull that off, Electrons would have to crowd into states that are already taken, and they are not permitted to, ever. So the clouds resist being crushed into each other with a pressure that has nothing whatsoever to do with charge. It is a flat refusal, written right into the rule book of the world. So here is the thing your own body has been hiding from you your whole life. When you knock on that table, nothing touches. Your atoms and the table's atoms never actually meet. What you feel as solid, as the hard flat no of the surface, is the push of electric fields and the stubbornness of a law against sharing, felt across a gap far too small for your fingers to ever notice. You have never touched anything. Not the table, not a doorknob, not another person's hand. Right at this moment, you are not truly sitting on your chair. You are floating a whisker above it, your electron shoving against its electrons, held up by force across an empty gap. Every handshake, every wall you have ever leaned on, every solid floor you have ever stood on, is a push at a distance wearing the costume of a touch. The whole sense of contact that you have trusted since you were a baby, the most basic message your skin keeps sending up to your brain, is in the end a kind of beautiful misunderstanding. Your nerves feel a force reaching across a gap, and they call it touch, because in ordinary life there was never once a reason to know the difference. Look back now at everything the atom told you, and lay it next to what is actually so. It told you it was a tiny solar system, planets riding tracks. There are no tracks and there are no planets. It told you the electron goes around. The electron does not go around. It told you in the look of every picture you were ever handed that it was a solid little thing. It is almost entirely empty, and the speck of it that is not empty is not a solid thing at all. It is a standing wave of pure possibility, a hum of where it might be, held in its shape by a rule that will not let it collapse, and held apart from its neighbors by a rule that will not let it merge. That cartoon you have been carrying around in your head was not a small lie. It got the very kind of thing wrong, top to bottom. And still we keep drawing it. Still we hand it to children, because the truth has no good picture. You cannot sketch a wave of maybe. You cannot draw a law against sharing. So we pass along the little solar system, knowing full well it is false, because it is the only lie simple enough to fit on the page. So look down at your own hand. It feels solid. It feels warm. It feels beyond the smallest doubt like a real and single thing that is most certainly there. And it is a swarm of almost empty atoms, each one a grain of salt nucleus lost inside a cathedral of haze. And that haze is not stuff but a wave, and that wave is not a fact but a question about where an electron is. And the whole shivering arrangement keeps its shape for one reason only. The universe refuses to let it fall inward, and refuses to let it blur into the things around it. The solid world is a kind of frozen music, the floor beneath your feet, the cup in your fist, the body you call your own, all of it is a pattern that keeps its form, because nature will not allow it to collapse, and will not allow it to truly touch. Nothing in there is what it pretends to be. The atom has been lying to you, gently, beautifully, in every solid ordinary thing you have ever leaned your weight against, for every single day you have been alive. So here is what I want from you. Reach out, right now, and press your hand flat and firm against the nearest table, until you feel that good solid resistance pushing back into your palm. Then think hard about everything I have just told you, and answer me one thing. In that moment of certain solid contact, what is it you believe you are truly feeling? Tell me what you think is really happening inside your hand.